Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to the Micflayers podcast. Today, we're continuing our coverage of One D&D. One D&D, the only place on the internet where people are more excited to see Feats than OnlyFans. My name is Martin O'Dwyer, and I'll be your host today. And joining me, as always, is Conor O'Brien, your host. How are you doing, Conor?
For context, Martin didn't tell me what his intro was beforehand, but he told me, I'm really, really proud of this one, Conor. And he's like, I really hope I get it in the first try. And you know what? Well done.
I thought of it in the shower after the gym, and I fucking laughed so hard. But you know, like when you make yourself
I can
laugh,
just picture you rubbing shampoo in your hair, and out of like if someone was watching from a third person perspective, out of context, you just start laughing to yourself in the shower like a crazy person.
Dude, that might be scarily accurate for how that happened. But yeah, today we're gonna continue our coverage on One D&D, like I said. But how are you doing, Conor? How has it been? Any news?
No, not really.
I know I said news so weirdly there. Sorry.
News. No, not really. I am in the process of we're coming up on the end of the year, and I am in the process of laying out something I never do. I'm laying out a plan for the campaign.
Oh damn.
Just because normally I just kind of I usually have an idea at the start of the campaign, and then I kind of have ideas about where things might go. But I'm actually like, we're coming to the end of the year. I said it before, I want to finish out the campaign by the end of the year. And we have like 12 weeks left or something like that. And I'm pretty sure I'm basically putting pen to paper and actually writing out a roadmap of what I want to get done in each session, so that we cover everything before the year is out, and then we can be we can finish up for New Year's then. So yeah, and it's pretty good. I think we actually have, I'm gonna knock on wood when I say this now. We actually have a couple of weeks of leeway that if things get held up, and let's be fucking honest, they will. If things get held up, I have a couple of weeks so I can kind of like get some time back and kind of make up for stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, so there is yeah, I'm hoping to get that done. I'm looking forward to the end of the campaign. It's always that kind of thing where like when you know the end is in sight, even though I'm enjoying everything we're doing at the moment and it's great fun, when you know the end is in sight, you kind of want to get it done. You kind of want to get there. You know, you can see the finish line, particularly because nothing is like you guys just turned level 15 last session.
We did.
And like nothing is more work for the DM. You always notice, like you know this because you've been in multiple of my campaigns. It takes many more sessions from you to get to level 4 to 5 than it will for you to get to level 16 to 17.
Yeah.
Because at that point it's so much work for me to keep those plates spinning and keep things challenging that I'm like, yeah, come on, let's just get it go. Let's get it done. 20 and then boss and then done. We're out.
You sound like you're talking about a quick mass.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Bing bang boom, out in a tight 40. Like.
Yeah. We'll stand down the back, and as soon as they start going for communion, we're out.
Yeah, when everyone stands up for communion, that's when you make your break. Everyone else is standing, don't even notice we clip out. We go for communion, and we come back down, we just don't go back to our seats, just straight out the door.
Me and my cousin got dragged to, we were like early college years, we got dragged to like a Christmas mass as a family thing by like two of our mothers and a couple other aunts and uncles and stuff going to like the traditional family church. And me and my cousin like walked in after my mum and my aunt were like, we'll stand down here by the back. Yeah, grand, because like neither of us believes in God. And we were just kind of standing there, and himself up the front starts talking anyway, and
by himself, do you mean the priest?
Yeah, the priest.
Yeah, okay, just clarifying.
And I was like, we were both just kind of standing leaning against the back wall, I was kind of staring off into space, and then I remembered there's a pub quite close by. So I leaned into my cousin and was like, the next time they stand up, do you just want to bail out the door there at the church and go down to the old pub there down in the corner, and we'll come back up with spirits raised? And he was like, you're a genius. And like as soon as they stood, I was like, oh please stand for and then everyone stood and just straight out the door down to the pub. But we were like, right, it's been about half an hour, we'll walk back up, came outside just as they were like, would you not see us inside?
Yeah,
Christmas.
in my local church growing up, we had It's a really odd. It's one across the road over
Yeah,
here
yeah.
from my house. It's a really odd one in that it's circular.
It looks like a
Um,
yurt,
yeah, yeah.
which
But
is very
it's circular,
appropriate.
whereas most like churches are, if you look on them from above, they're
Yeah,
shaped like crosses. Um, and they usually have just pews running the whole way up in a single aisle. But this was like a circular altar kind of in the middle. Not an altar rather, but the raised area, the
yeah.
altar sitting on it. And then like multiple kind of like spokes of a wheel kind of coming out from around it. But we always kind of sat over to the left or right, but occasionally at like again Christmas mass and stuff like that, you'd come in and be so busy you'd have to go right to the very back. But the very back ones were just, they had no like kind of pew or kind of post in front of it. It was just an open kind of chair that was built against the wall, but all the radiators were built in underneath those chairs.
Oh,
And fittingly, God help you, because if you sit in those chairs, you're guaranteed to fall asleep at Christmas Mass. It's so warm and cozy, and you're there, and you're listening, and you're leaning back in. So you've a wall to lean on as well. Like you,
and Jesus. That's all I ever heard when I was in church, when I was in mass, man.
but like
Like Charlie Brown's parents, like.
yeah, but yeah, it was like very very yeah. It
Yeah.
was cool, lovely. It was the best part. Like you'd almost be wishing for a Christmas mask, because like, oh, if I had to sit down there now in the middle of all the chairs, it's freezing, and I can't lean back in anything because the pew only comes up to like my middle, like my lower middle back or whatever. And then I'm like, but no, if I lean against the wall now, oh, this is a good spot. And occasionally, if you're on the back wall with a window next to you, the window frame jutted out a bit, so there's a little bit of a corner, and you could kind of just rest the corner of your head in that, and it wouldn't slip on anything, you know.
Do you still do Christmas mass out of curiosity?
No, I haven't been to mass in years.
Oh
I
yeah,
went. Sorry,
uh,
I only go to masses now when it's funerals, unfortunately.
or
Um,
weddings, funerals or weddings. Those are the only two masses that
or
I'll actually go
weddings,
to.
or weddings. Although that
Yeah,
being said, my own wedding wasn't in a church, and my
and it
cousin
was
who had
awesome.
hers like a month after me, also wasn't in the church. It was actually in the garden of where she had hers. So.
Very
And
cool.
every single person said the same thing to me after our wedding, and said the same thing after hers as well. It's like, why are we going and doing like an hour and a half long mass when we could be in and out in like 30 minutes and straight into drinking pints at reception?
To be fair, I will give full credit to the Irish Army. They do an incredible wedding ceremony because
I
my
saw
cousin.
pictures of your
Yeah,
cousins. Yeah,
yeah.
it was
You
really cool.
haven't been to, you have not seen a wedding ceremony till like halfway through it without any warning. 6 soldiers carrying swords march formally all the way down, and then Irish give each other directions, and then just hold swords out for about 5 minutes solid while the couple get married, and then
They just had the swords raised in the air,
yeah.
kind of over crossing like that, right?
So they like so this is sorry if you're looking for One D&D. We've now gone from Christmas mass to Irish church to Irish weddings to soldier weddings, but it was really cool. What they did is there were 6 soldiers from the barracks that my cousin's husband now is stationed in, and they like marched like properly down from the in through the door and out down to the top of the church, with their swords like this in front of them, like they had like the cavalry style sabers in front of
Yeah.
them. And then when they got to the top, they split into 2 teams of 3 and went left and right. And then they got their swords and like in Irish were directed to like hold the sword up and then kind of go and like bring it down up over their head and then down slowly over to their left. And they kind of held it up kind of like just like a 45-degree angle, kind of like up off their shoulder.
Mm.
And they had to hold that for like 5+ minutes. And I was paying no attention to the ceremony. I was just watching these lads' arms like go like this
Shaking.
after like 3 minutes. It was just
Yeah.
watching them try and like hold it, because like doing that like with sword was hard enough, but after that, after the whole ceremony stuff, then they like marched back out, and they waited outside the door. Then so when the bride and groom came out, they walked out of the church and like together as a married couple, under like a bridge of swords. Basically, they all held the swords out like that, like up above their heads, and it was so cool. It was so cool. I was just like, this is the coolest shit in the world.
I had the same thing in my wedding chair, but with sparklers.
Yes, you did, and that was very cool.
Basically
As
the
well.
same thing.
That was very, very cool. That was much more of a festival than a Ren festival vibe that the swords brought to the other one. But yes, let's
There was
talk.
actually
Oh, go on.
sorry, just very quickly, at my cousin's wedding, like the month after mine, they tried to do that same sparkler thing where 2 rows of people and everyone had sparklers and stuff. We went outside. Okay, when we did it at our art wedding, right? One of the guys working there, he was like basically running the floor staff for the day or whatever. He was very smart. He had two kind of like blow torches, like the
Yeah,
small
yeah,
gas blow torches in the tents. He made sure everyone had one thing. He goes, all right, everyone ready? Cool. And he went, "Ksh," and he lit both of them, and he just walked backwards and let everyone light their things off the two torches. And then of course, they were all lit for the photos, and it was great. At my cousin's one, the hotel clearly doesn't do this very often, and the staff grabbed a bundle of them together, and then
No.
and then they lit them in the middle. So if it's like that long, they lit them like here in the middle of the other thing, and then basically there was so many of them clustered together. There was just a big. It was like
They welded them
holding.
together.
Essentially, it was just like a big glowing orange ball, and they tried to hand a couple out to people, and like maybe three people got them, and because they lit them so low down, they burnt out within, I don't know, 20 seconds. They didn't even get halfway down the row of people, and then like the girl who was handing them out had to throw them down onto the ground because she's essentially holding a big fireball in her hand, and it was getting too hot to hold.
Yeah.
So she had to throw it down, and then we were all like, right, well, that's all the sparklers gone anyway. So then we were just like, phones, and everyone just turned on the camera and the lights on their phones.
Oh, that's excellent. Fair play. Quick thinking.
Yeah.
Like.
To be
Oh.
fair, immediately following that, as the bride and groom walked down and we got the photos, they walked down onto the lawn, and then no one else could see this because it was way down the lawn, like in the darkness and the trees and stuff. But they had people out there setting up fireworks, and they had gorgeous fireworks going off, and it started to rain at the same time. So you had the fireworks going up,
How
the
romantic.
bride and groom kind of
Fireworks
like
in the rain.
silhouetted by it, the rain coming down, and then the smoke off the fireworks and stuff as well.
Very cool.
And like I've seen some of the shots, and like when all those kind of effects hit each other in the right way, there was some pretty serious looking photos. It was pretty cool.
That's
Made up for the hotel staff kind of botching the sparklers a little bit.
Oh man, everyone knows sparklers like weld themselves together as soon as they're lit if you put them beside each other. Like.
Yeah, and also they only burn for about 20 odd seconds. Like,
Yeah.
Even the good ones, you might get 30 seconds out of it. Like, so make sure like you want to be doing that stuff fast.
Yeah, 100%.
Anyway, let's talk about D&D.
Yeah, we'll talk about D&D. So last week we kind of gave a brief overview, like the rogue changes. Just particularly to some of the ones that had caused a lot of like, I'll be generous and say discourse, online since they brought it in. Particularly the changes to sneak attack and it being nerfed slightly a couple of ways.
Yeah. Again, I'll stand by what I said last week. I don't think that's horribly detrimental. I think sneak attack in and of itself is a great ability, and just because you don't get two of that great thing doesn't mean it's not going to be terrible or anything like that. It's still a really good ability. It's sneak attack, like.
Yeah, as a DM, absolutely delighted because my rogue eviscerated a monster that just had to move.
As a DM who ran a 1 to 20 campaign with two rogues, yeah. I'm very happy that's not a rule.
Yeah, I'm as a DM, I'm happy, but I can absolutely understand why rogue players are mauling because of it. But yeah, I can understand both points of view. As a DM, very happy. As someone who is potentially going to play a rogue at some point, kind of disappointed that. I think why people got so upset about it is because they saw it as like I heard it described as hidden tech. Because it's not specifically stated in the sneak attack rules that that's how it works. You have to like interpret it that that's how it works. If you get me.
Yeah.
It doesn't say like if you hit a creature on a turn that isn't yours with a reactionary attack, your sneak attack applies. Like it doesn't say that. So, but it also doesn't say that doesn't happen. So like a rogue with Sentinel would have been really good. Would have been really good. So like the argument I heard was that it was hidden tech. So like you would only really do this if you were like an experienced player. So the argument I had heard before was that like new players aren't doing this because new players are still struggling to understand how sneak attack applies.
To be fair, I remember for so long in the first campaign, we again having a rogue and then a second rogue come in, and we were still questioning like. No, you get advantage gives you sneak attack, but sneak attack doesn't give you advantage and all this. Like we were still kind of like going through that kind of stuff in our head. So I get that, and like again, like yeah, it's kind of it's that meme of the higher brain function thing as you go along. Like this is definitely the awakened brain where you're like, oh, but if I apply these two, and look, there's loads of hacks on
Oh,
it
it's
out there.
definitely like how does sneak attack work, and that's the first one. And then the second one where it's like the brain and it's like kind of lit up. It's like sneak attack works like this, and then it's like the third one where it's like galaxy brain is like you can
Yeah,
also get sneak attack on opportunity attacks.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. But again, like I said it last week, I just don't feel like I get it. It's a good move, and again, I just don't see that was what they, particularly because this is the rule that they've written now. I feel like that wasn't the intent when they wrote
Yeah.
it. They're like they kind of they phrase it in such a way in the player's handbook that it seems like it's intentional that you're only going to use it once per turn, and then they completely forgot that opportunity attacks and all that kind of stuff are a thing. So once per turn phrasing was their kind of mess up there, but I feel like their intention was yes, you only get it once per turn,
Yeah,
once per round, kind of.
it
But anyway,
it definitely feels like a correction. Like
yeah,
it's like,
oh yeah,
ooh, we didn't see that loophole. Let's fix that. It's like
yeah, exactly.
it's like when Blizzard added the thing to their you know the beta testing, their beta testing or the public beta kind of stuff they do where you can like, oh no, it was the mod, it was the when they released Warcraft 3 Forged or whatever, and you could do you could do the like modded games where you had different mutators and multipliers and stuff like that, which is basically how like the MOBA scene was birthed out of like Warcraft 3 was like
Right.
the first like Dota came out of a mod for that from thing, and it's like when they re-released the thing, they were like, oh, by the way, if you happen to make any new games in our engine, it's our property, because they because they did do that in Warcraft 3, and then Dota and League of Legends happened, and they got none of that money. So
Okay,
it feels like Wizards is coming back now and being like, oh no, you get sneak attack once, and be happy
yeah,
about it.
yeah. Um, yeah, but I think honestly, there's not a whole lot different in Rogue. We mentioned last week that
Mhm.
Crawford was all like, he said like Rogue is consistently one of the most appreciated classes and most highest ranked in terms of ratings out there.
Yeah, in player
Which
satisfaction.
makes sense. I mean, like honestly, rogues are very fun to play. They're very fun to have in your party. They get to do very cool stuff
They're
because they add a lot of their
very
action
hard to
from
kill.
bonus actions.
They're very
They're also
hard
quite
to
hard
kill.
to kill. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not particularly like tanky, but they can be very hard to kill because of like evasion
Evasion,
and
uncanny
uncanny
dodge.
dodge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We listed them in
Um,
order of how problematic they are.
Speaking
Yes.
of, I think where we left off last week, we were just talking about some of the abilities. I'll run
Mhm.
through them very quickly, but there's not a whole lot of changes, bar some things being shuffled around level wise.
Yeah.
At 5th level, you get uncanny dodge, same as before. It works the same.
Mhm.
At 6th level, it used to be expertise. That's been bumped out to 7 now. Your second set of expertise, I
Yeah.
should say.
They've
Again, because these are all the expert classes.
what they have changed quite a bit about Rogue is the order and the levels in which you get your skills. They've moved the core
Yeah.
Rogue stuff a little further up along the progression path than it used to be.
But in exchange, you get your what would normally be your 9th level rogue ability. You get at 6th level now instead.
Yes. Yeah.
Which, like, rogues were always kind of really back heavy like that. It wasn't until you got up near and into the double digits that you actually started getting your subclass abilities.
Yeah.
Usually the 3rd level ability for rogue is quite solid anyway, and it's usually a good foundation. But yeah, I like that it's a bit more balanced now. We get the 9th level stuff a bit earlier.
Yeah, I think it just brings
Uh,
them into line with more of the other classes, like because like
yeah,
even like barb stuff, you score like three. It's like 3, 5, 7. It's like 3, 5, 7, and like not like 9, 10. Like it's not like that middle pack for
is the barb subclass stuff?
just barb stuff in general. Like you get
Oh yeah, well
they
that's
have like a really solid early level kind of power thing, but I suppose yeah with rogue it was
same
the
thing
more.
with clerics as well. Because clerics get their what do they get? They get their like either cantrip thing at like 8th level, and then they get their like basically they get a lot of stuff before 10th, and all their like bonus spells they get at different levels as well come in at levels 1 to 10.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of stuff. By level 10, a cleric is really well entrenched in its own subclass, which is nice. 8th level, you get a feat. 9th level, so previously 7th level used to be evasion. That's been bumped out to 9th level as well. So evasion and
Killing all my rogues at 8th level.
10th level is a feat. Reliable talent is still 11th level and still functions the same. Yeah, still functions the same. It does specify that, we talked about this last week, it's either a tool proficiency or a skill proficiency that uses proficiency now, right? When it
Yes.
comes to reliable talent. Technically, again, similarly, I don't think this was the intent of it, but because initiative is technically a check, you should have been adding that. But when you look at like things like the swashbuckler that gets a bonus to their initiative equal to their charisma and stuff, it's like, no, I don't think you're meant to get a bonus of your charisma plus a bonus of your proficiency plus whatever your dex as well. Like that would be very broken.
That's the big change to that one. In terms of like the skills and stuff, it's now it's specifically when you make with like tools and stuff. It's when you make a skill check tied to a proficiency. And it seems most of the kind of checks are coming out as now, and stuff like initiative isn't actually. Well, it is a skill check, but it doesn't have a proficiency tied to it, so it doesn't.
So you can't use reliable talent with
reliable talent or jack of all trades, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I think that's actually. I do think that this isn't terrible. Particularly, like, okay, if you were to read it here, it's like, oh, I can't use. Again, rules as written, yes, that's what it said previously in the player's handbook. Now it's like, now that again they're correcting something that shouldn't have been a thing in the first place. But also, it actually kind of works out okay because, even with your, because you said like reliable talent and like tool proficiencies now. Oh, you brought up last week actually about
Jack of all trades.
No, the using tools, using your thieves tools.
Yes.
Doesn't have thieves. When you have proficiency in thieves tools, it's like,
you used to be able to pick thieves tools as one of your proficiencies, as a rogue, and that was taken out.
One of your expertise actually.
Yeah, sorry, both, like, because proficiency is but that's been pulled out now, and that's so people were like giving out about the fact that you could no longer have expertise in thieves tools, so you couldn't no longer be like really excellent at like being that like lock picking, trap disabling kind of rogue. But because of the way tools checks now works and thieves tools has a tool set associated with it, you still do get that double dip of your modifiers on it in a similar way to how expertise works.
Yeah, it's like if you make a check, an ability check for a tool that you're proficient with, you get the proficiency for that tool. But also, like, if you're proficient in the skill that would have been used, so in this case, like sleight of hand, then you get your proficiency from tools, and then you get advantage because you're also proficient the other way. And that actually kind of works out the same, because advantage statistically, that's hard to say, kind of accounts for approximately a +5 boost. To most skill checks on a D20, it accounts for about a +5. So when you consider having advantage on a roll, and then having the proficiency as well, it kind of works out at about the same of having double proficiency anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 12 is an ability score increase. Subtle strikes is a new one, I believe, at 13 level. When you attack, you now know how to exploit. See, okay, we talked about this before. Subtle strikes should be just the name of sneak attack, like, or something like that. But anyway,
sucker punch, cheap shot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know how to exploit a target's distraction. You have advantage on attack rolls that target creatures that's within 5 feet of at least one other ally. So wait, that makes sense. You have advantage. Oh, you have advantage. That's right. So So previously, as sneak attack works, if one of your allies is within 5 feet of an enemy you're attacking, you get sneak attack. Now, like we misconceived early in our days of playing D&D, you actually get advantage from that as well now. That's actually really cool. That's a cool ability.
It makes sneak attack work how like new players think sneak attack works.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. 14 level ability is a subclass feature.
Yeah.
Previously you got blind sense from that, which I never thought, maybe I'd never seen it be very effective, having blind sense out to 10 feet of you at those levels. That's never jumped out to me as being...
Yeah, it's so niche. Like, unless for some reason your DM has like a fetish for invisible stalkers, like it's not going to be...
Yeah. That was subtle strikes, and then we're dropping blind sense at 14, and we just get a subclass feature. Slippery mind is back at 15 again, but this time it's not just wisdom saving throws, it's wisdom and charisma. So now you basically have proficiency in all of the mental saving throws, which is pretty cool. I
think that's actually a pretty big buff to get like
charisma is more important than int. Int rarely comes up, but wisdom comes up an awful lot, and charisma comes up an awful lot. So having proficiency in all three of those is really, really solid.
It's very, very good, and like now, like, be that much harder to banish the damage dealer in the fight. Like, Because anytime I think
Yep.
charisma saves, I just think banishment, because banishment is just such a fucking bastard of a spell.
It really is. I thought you only said because I've used it on you a few times.
Yeah.
We get 17th level instead of 18, so one level
Mm.
earlier. We get elusive, which I believe works the same. No attack roll has advantage on you while you aren't incapacitated. Yeah, same as before, which is a really cool ability
so
for
cool,
high
like-
level rogues. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what was 20th level stroke of luck is now 18th level stroke of luck. Previously, let me see, this was, okay, no, if your attack misses a target within range, you can turn the attack into a hit. You can only use that feature once per short or long rest. Alternatively, you can do the same with an ability check as well.
Yeah.
Now it just says, if you fail a D20 test, well, it's actually the same thing. They just rephrase it as
Ooh.
actually, no, that actually count. That includes
Saving throws.
Saving throws now, because it's a D20 test, yeah.
Which does
So,
feel very much in the vein of the intention of the original ability. It's that.
I
you
mean,
know,
like, realistically, it's like that means you have evasion and you have one legendary resistance, essentially, where you can just decide to succeed
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I hope we get this with fighters like Indomitable. I hope they change that to
Oh
just
my God,
you
yeah.
get a use of legendary resistance, essentially, because that'd be a lot better, I think. And it would kind of be like, no one else gets that. Let's give it to the fighter. Let's make them really kind of cool and be able to get back up
Yes.
from a bad hit, you know. Not to mention some bad spells that might hit you. And then so 18th level, as we mentioned last week, is a capstone for all classes now.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, we have our level 19 feat and epic boon at level 20. So the subclass they gave us now is thief.
Thief, yes. Not like a super popular rogue subclass. I think most people, even if they want to do thieving, will go like assassin and then they'll just steal stuff.
I think thief was in the 2014 book. Thief was the weakest of the three.
Yeah.
People pick assassin an awful lot, and I read back through assassin recently because I haven't looked at it since our first campaign. And I read back through it. I'm like, this is a crap subclass. It does like one good thing. You only get one bonus, right? At the very start of combat in the first round, you can do one cool thing, and then it gives you no other benefits for the rest of the combat. Like,
It does so much damage.
no, it does, but like, it's like, particularly if you're fighting a horde of creatures or multiple enemies, like if an enemy only has like 40 health, it doesn't matter that you did 90 something damage. He only had 40 health. That doesn't transfer through anywhere, you know. So
True.
It's don't get me wrong, it's a good subclass. It's just not great, and it kind of surprises me reading back over the three of them as they were published, 8 years ago, that more people don't play Arcane Trickster, because Arcane Trickster is so good by comparison, so
Arcane Trickster
useful.
is pretty cool. Yeah.
So they've tweaked a couple things here. We still have fast hands at 3rd level. Previously, this that you use a cunning action to make a dexterity sleight of hands check, to use your thieves tools to disarm a trap, open a lock, or take the use object action. They have this. You can do the search action now, which I believe incorporates some of that, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I believe so. I'm just flicking down to check it here because this is an extremely long document.
It is. The other part in it, the sleight of hand part, you can use your bonus action for one of your cunning actions, which can do the following, and it says make a dexterity sleight of hand check to disarm. So that's still there, but also it's to take the search action.
Yeah. So the search action is when you make when you take the search action, you make a wisdom check to discern something that isn't obvious. The search table suggests which skills are applicable when you take this action, depending on what you're trying to detect. So if you're trying to detect a creature's state of mind, you use insight. A creature's alignment, you use medicine. I would have said insight for that one, weirdly as well, but okay. Concealed creature or object, perception, tracks or food, survival. So that's not bad, actually. Like the search action gives you quite a bit of like options in terms of what you want to do with it. Like because thieves can do this as a bonus action now. So what I'm immediately thinking of is, like, say you're like fighting a dragon in its cave, and it like hides or turns invisible or something, and you're trying to like find it. You if you're a thief rogue now, you can use your bonus action to search, and then do the perception check as a bonus action instead of the action it would normally take you to do to try and perceive where something is. Weirdly, another one that's really good against invisible creatures.
Yeah. But
I like some of that. Yeah. That's not
it's not hugely different or anything.
No.
we have second story work, which is a little changed. It's more or less
Mm-hmm.
the same in that previously it did the whole like no longer costs you extra movement to climb and stuff. Where it's like just tell me I have a climbing speed.
Yeah.
It's really the phrasing that's really weird to me. And also said, actually, I think it's the same. In addition, when you're making a running jump, the distance you cover increases by a number of feet equal to your dex. I think this changed now. You can use dex instead of strength
Yeah.
for that check, which makes sense for rogues, and that kind of gives me like Assassin's Creed kind of parkouring across rooftops kind of style stuff in my head. You know, when I think of that.
Yeah.
So I like that a lot. That's a nice increase. Particularly again because if you're dumping a lot of points into dexterity because you're a rogue naturally, you don't want to have to be splitting your points into strength to get good jumps to to kind of fill out this ability. So they've changed Supreme Sneak. Again, another weird one because this was like this is a reason I never played a thief before, by the way, because the phrasing of second story work was strange. Supreme Sneak was a bit odd because you get advantage on a stealth check as long as you move no more than half your speed on a turn. And I'm like, okay, so what if I use just like 15 feet of my regular movement? Can I bonus action or action dash to still get 30 feet of movement while also sneaking? It implies, I guess, that you can only move whatever half your speed is, but it's a weird one. Now it says you just get that advantage on sneak as long as you aren't wearing medium or heavy armor, which I think makes perfect sense.
Studded leather is what most rogues go for, at least anyway.
Exactly, yeah. 13 is use magic device. Previously, this that you. Oh, this kind of.
Do you mean
that's
10?
it. 10, 13. Oh, sorry, it's 10 now. It actually was 13. So you actually get it earlier now. Oh, sorry, because they bumped them all down. That's right, yeah. Because again, it's now 3, 6, 10, 14 instead of 3, 9, 13, 17. So that's considerably lower for all of them.
Yeah.
Use magic device used to be that you ignore class, race, level restrictions for magic items. Now you can attune to a fourth item, which is nice. Oh yes, actually, I really like this ability. When you use a magic item that has charges, roll a d6, and on a 6, you do not expend that charge when you use it.
Yeah, like I don't think it's like super impactful, but I do like it, particularly because do you know the way there's those magic items where if you use all the charges that
they disintegrate or something
like with this, if you really want to roll the dice in like a really important battle and you want to just burn all the charges or something on it, you could do that and potentially not lose the item based on
that. That's quite cool. And then you also get the ability to use spell scrolls in what I think is the standard way for using them. Cantrips and first levels you can just cast. Anything higher you need to make an arcana check to be able to use it. It's almost weird to me that thieves get the ability to use magic items and stuff like that, and not arcane tricksters. This feels really more arcane tricksters in my head, but maybe this is like,
I think
the idea is,
oh sorry, go on please.
I was going to say is the idea that when they're talking about a thief, is it someone who might steal magic items, or also you might be the kind of thief that like plunders ancient tombs to get magic items? So
yeah, I think it's the delineation between an arcane trickster. I cannot speak today. An arcane trickster, which is why I was so worried about the intro. An arcane trickster can cast spells. They are magical in and of themselves. They're like a wizard. They work like wizards, right? They like learn their spells.
In Sister, and they learn. Yeah. I believe so. Actually, I'll have to double check.
They're like the wizard half caster, basically.
Oh yeah, 1/3 caster actually.
1/3 caster. Apologies.
Yeah.
But So like I think it's the way that like as an arcane trickster in your base kit you have spells, versus as a thief, you do not have magic of any kind, but you steal a lot of stuff. And in a magical world, like you're probably like stealing magic items from like the rich and powerful. And like because you're doing that, you've experience in like trying to figure out how these things work. Like that's why you can use the spell scrolls as a thing, because like that's why they get that, because like they actually like need to use an item to be magical, whereas the arcane trickster is magical innately.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, I guess. I can imagine a thief having lots of little trinkets in their pockets that they've slipped off of people over the years, and it's like, oh, I hang on to this because it lets me make a fog cloud, and normally I wouldn't be able to use this, but I've made it work for myself. They're kind of adaptive in that way.
Yeah, it's very like like Sam's alt character in campaign 1, Terry Darrington.
Darian Darrington. I was
Yeah,
actually
Darian
I was
Darrington.
only watching his intro scene the other day on YouTube.
I've loved him popping up in the more recent campaigns where it's like, oh, this is the book about Vox Machina. Who wrote it? It's from Darrington Publishing. I was like, ah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, but no, I totally agree with you. It seems weird in that, but I guess it works for me. Wanted to bring us through Thief's Reflexes because I've heard some people giving out about this one as well.
Yeah, so what this previously let you do, I actually like the phrasing of it. 17th level, you've become adept at laying ambushes and quickly escaping danger. You can take 2 turns during the first round of any combat. You take the first turn at your normal initiative and the second turn at your initiative -10. You can't use this feature when you are surprised. So in the first, this kind of brings a bit like the assassin for me, where it's like in the first round you do something really cool, you get off, and like, don't get me wrong, this could be very, very useful, being able to like set something up and then immediately trigger it in the same round.
With the old one, if you go first, you're probably going to get 3 turns in a row.
If you like surprise someone and get like a surprise round or something as well, or
am I being really dumb? I'm being really dumb, aren't I? I am being really dumb. So remind me. So it goes, you go, yeah. Sorry, no, I'm not being dumb. Right. So like, let's say you roll. Let's say you go first, right?
okay.
So you've your first turn where you say you roll like an 18 or a 19, so you're first on the initiative. Then you take your next roll, your next turn at initiative -10. So you're down to 8 or 9.
8 or 9. Yeah.
So let's say that makes you last in the initiative order as well. So when it goes, so if you're both first and last when you start that first turn, you start your turn. You're going to or rather that when that first turn ends, it's good. You're going to when you start your first turn, you get 1 turn. Then it goes to the bottom of initiative order, and you get that turn, and then immediately after that turn, you get another turn.
Oh yeah,
so but you get 3 turns on the first round of initiative.
Yes.
Basically.
You well, okay. If you had like surprise, if a creature was surprised, you would get 3 turns in the time it took them to get 1, because they're going to miss their first turn in the first round, in which you get 2, and in the second round you both get 1. So you're on 3 turns now, and they only just took their first turn. So
yeah, but that's what I'm saying in terms of like without being surprised, like as this is written, like if you go first and then you go last on that first round, you're gonna go first. You're gonna like say you're fighting a boss monster, you go first, you hit the boss monster, gets to the end of that initiative order, you go again, you hit that boss monster because you're last, and then your turn as the last creature initiative order ends, goes back to the top of the initiative order where you are again. So you've gotten 3 turns in the first like round and a half of combat when they've only gotten 1. That's really powerful, like, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And like rogues are liable to go early in combat anyway because of their nature.
Yeah.
Now it is. You can take a second bonus action on your turn, provided the bonus action is one of your cunning actions. You can use the feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus and gain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. That's not bad in my mind. That's still pretty good. Don't get me wrong. Having an additional turn, a whole additional turn, is a big deal. But that's a once-off per combat. Whereas I feel like this ability can be used more tactically. You could like bonus action, like depending on what rules you use. We have on what class you're playing, stuff like that. You might be able to cast a bonus action spell or drink a potion as a bonus action. We do that homebrew rule. You might be able to activate a magic item as a bonus action.
You can search.
And then, sorry?
You can search.
You could search. So you could like attack and then activate like one of these things, and then use one of these additional bonus actions after getting to do your attack and activating a magic item or doing whatever else you want to do with your regular bonus action. And now you get to run away with a dash, or you get to hide, or you get to disengage. This is pretty useful, and honestly, like, don't get me wrong, again, I see the raw power and potential of how it previously was, but I feel like this, because you get multiple uses of it and you can apply it where you want to instead of it having to be the first round of combat, I can see this being a lot more flexible. Reflex. I can see this being a lot more flexible in how it can be used.
Yeah, like what popped into my head in terms of like the power of this thing would be like, let's say it is your turn, you're the thief rogue, and let's say you have a magic item like the Iron Bands of Balaro. That one, it's the ball you throw at someone and it like restrains them if it hits. So like on a turn as a rogue, you could run up, use your first bonus action to activate the magic item and like throw it, right?
Yes, yeah.
You first want to activate that magic item and throw it. It hits, they're restrained. Then you go into your action, which is now like, sorry, are they incapacitated? No, they're only restrained. So never mind. But like you could basically go up, stab, sneak attack, like throw the iron bands of Bolaro at them. It hits them, they get restrained, and then you have another sneak attack where you can dash or disengage to get away, and then just let the rest of the team just pile on.
Yeah.
And then there's like it just makes you even more mobile as a rogue as well, because like technically you could action dash, bonus action dash, bonus action dash.
Yeah, I thought about this earlier. If you were playing like a Tabaxi or something, and you took like the
Feline
mobile
agility
feat,
as well.
you would just be able to decide your speed is now doubled, so you're moving at 80 feet around if you have the mobile feat, and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to action dash, that's 160, and then I'm going to bonus action dash, that's 160, and then 240, and then it's 320 if I decide I want to use one of these now. So as a rogue, I just moved 320 feet in a single round. Like, there's some cool stuff you could do and cool combos.
You can become the
I mean,
Flash.
if you're a thief, like,
like...
I don't care what the response time is for the local city watch. Because if you can move 320 feet in 6 seconds, you're gone. They're not catching you.
what, like, Jesus, this, like, that must be an absurd amount of, like, speed. Like, legitimately, like, 320 feet in 6 seconds.
Yeah, I'm curious what that would come out to, like, miles per hour.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, you'd have to convert the feet into metric. God. Oh no, because it'll come out miles rather than kilometers. It's fine. I'm being dumb. Maths isn't my strong suit.
I want to do it now, but I'd be here for like 2 minutes solid doing it on the podcast.
You'll just be there like drawing out the like diagram, like S equals D over D.
Yeah. Do you want to move on to some feats?
Yes.
I know you got some opinions, man.
I do have some opinions, but we'll get to that. We might get to them in a little bit.
Okay.
I just want to.
We'll ease into it.
One thing. Oh yeah, grand. Yeah, we plenty of time. Yeah, so with feats, there's a lot of them. There is an awful lot of them. My intro was not only funny but true. We have it's 37 pages in this document, and 1, 2,
I believe so.
3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, here we go.
7, 8.
Martin's getting numerical on us.
Yeah, there's 8. Like out of 37 pages, 8 of those are feats. So there's a lot of feats.
Feats are quite a bit, like, just wording wise, feats are a bit chunkier now. Like some feats previously used to just go, you get this, and it's like one thing. And now almost every feat has like 3 or 4 individual parts to it. A bit like how like crossbow expert used to give you like 3 things, I think it was previously, as part of one feat. Now pretty much every feat has multiple parts that way, like that. They're thick.
Thick AF indeed, yeah. Thick ass feats. I'm just looking at funnily enough, with stuff like crossbow expert actually hasn't really changed. Aside from pretty much the one universal change with all of these feats right now is that they now have prerequisites. Either level prerequisites or specific dexterity or strength prerequisites, or for some of them have spellcasting prerequisites, like you must have the spellcasting or pact magic feature. Overall as well, they seem to have done a bit of a job of gating power in terms of feats, because there are a lot of feats previously that you could have taken at first level, if you were like human variant, we'll say, so you're starting with a feat, or even just going off the previous One D&D playtest character option stuff, or you would start with a feat. It said you could pick any feat that you could do it, but obviously some of these are actually, like, I think most of these are.
I think all of these are 4th level
they're
ones.
They're all 4th level, or the epic boons, which are also there, which are 20th level.
They're kind of taking some interesting directions with feats in general, because one, they're saying, okay, now everybody starts with a feat. Again, if we're going off the previous thing, and that turns out to be be implemented, everyone gets a feat at 1st level. If you're a human variant, you get 2, or what is just human now. Do you get 2 feats at 1st level?
I believe so, yeah.
And then like. But in order to kind of counter the fact that everyone's getting your feat at 1st level, not everyone can pick the really good feats at 1st level. You kind of got to ease into it a little bit, which makes sense. So, and they're tying some feats that are only going to be applicable to martial characters, and some feats will only be applicable to casters and stuff. Which has me a little worried, only for the fact that it is a magical initiate, isn't in here, is it?
Let me have a quick look. Sorry, I
I
was
don't see
just.
it.
No, Mage Slayer is their medium armor master, but no magic initiate.
See, I always like taking magic initiate on a character that maybe isn't a full caster, so that I can get a little bit of extra magic on what would otherwise be a martial or kind of semi-mundane character.
Yeah,
Um, but so I would hope that that stays as one that you can still do stuff like that. I like that cross play when you're like, oh, I'm playing a fighter, but I'm going to take a couple of feats that give me a little bit of
yeah,
extra spells on it. Maybe you're playing like a fighter and you're like, you don't want to be a paladin, you want to be a fighter, but you want to be a fighter that does worship the god of war and stuff like that. So you take a magic initiate and you have one use of cure wounds and you
yeah.
spare the dying and a couple other things, just more for flavor than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I'd like to see that cross play and that cross ability continue with feats.
I'd imagine that's probably why that's left out here. I'd say they're probably still hammering that out and how it works, because I'm pretty sure if you do take that magic initiate feat, don't you gain spellcasting as a feature?
I don't know technically. I know what you mean. Like, I know it doesn't work for stuff like, well, we'll say they've kind of gotten better with a lot of spellcasting rules, because I remember Magic Initiate previously didn't say anything about you. It said you can cast the spell once as an action per long rest or whatever it was. It didn't say that you knew the spell, which became tricky if you had other spell slots as a cleric, you multi-class and a cleric, whatever, and you wanted to be able to use that cure wounds again. You didn't actually know it. They've kind of re-clarified and redone a couple of stuff like that in newer subclasses, where it's like any subclass that gives you the ability to cast a spell a number of times now also clarifies that you also know this spell and can cast it again with other spell slots you might have.
Yeah, it's like that kind of like meshing with spellcasting, and particularly different kinds of spellcasting, is always a little tricky in terms of like how does this work and how does it work, and trying to work out how many spell slots you have versus that and stuff. But yeah, I'd imagine that's probably why they've left that out. Yeah, like you're saying, it's actually not all of these are 4th levels, because the fighting style feats are there, and most of them are, if not all of them, are 1st level.
Oh, I see them just now, yeah.
Feats. Actually no, most of the lower, the ones that would have been like lower tier or lower power fighting styles, have 1st level stuff. But your stuff like your more powerful ones, like your weapon master, sharpshooter, sentinel, that kind of stuff, they're all 4th level requisites. But like stuff like
fighting styles in general are just feats now. Which is interesting.
Same as ASIs. ASIs are just feats now too. You just take
the very first feat on this list is ability score improvement, and it just says you can take a +2 to 1 or a +1 to 2 separate scores, which is, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Again, this is more just like housekeeping. It doesn't actually change the power level. It doesn't change how the rule works. It's just like you're just kind of like I said it a while ago. You're kind of just changing the color of the folders that things are being stored in, but they're still there.
Yeah, exactly.
Because at 4th level and other levels that you would normally get ASIs, you could do that anyway. Now they're just saying, why not? ASIs are technically now a feat. It still works all the same way, it's just named differently.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of these are it seems like more like operational stuff, or just organizational stuff, cleaning up language, changing certain terms.
There's a lot of cleaning up language in what we've seen so far from these 2 UAs.
Yeah, like I'm just having a quick look at my notes here. Like most of them have very, very, very little change. Some of them, actually, an interesting one I want to talk about, because it involves a new rule that I think we might have already mentioned here, is the athlete feat. So
I'm actually looking at it right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So previously you used to get +1 strength or dex, and then it would only take you 5 feet to get up from getting prone. Climbing wouldn't cost you extra movement, is the way that was phrased there. And then you could do a running, long, or high jump after only a 5-foot run up. Now it's a 4th level requirement, so you cannot take this at 1st level. You cannot repeat it. Con has been thrown into the mix as well, which I actually really appreciate.
Con and Dex, there was Dex previously. I apologize. Yeah, Con was thrown in.
Yeah, and you need at least 13 strength, Dex, or Con to take this. Actually, that's another requisite. And then slight power bump in that unit can now choose to use Con as well to boost your Con with this. And then instead of just climbing not costing you extra move speed, they just clarify and say you now have a climbing speed, which is awesome. Similarly, it only costs you 5 feet to stand up, but now the way it works is instead of it only costing you 5 feet of movement to do a running, long, or high jump, because the way it currently works is you need a 10-foot run up and you can jump horizontally as far as your strength score and vertically as high as your strength modifier.
Yes.
That has now changed. Do you have the jump rules handy there, Connor, by any chance?
Oh God, I don't.
It's okay. I'm almost at them myself. There
I know.
I
I would know if I had my book on me. I'd know exactly where to turn to. But I don't have
No,
that.
it's all good. It's all good. I have it here, and there's actually another rule change you might want to have a bit of a discussion about as well, right beside it, which is the light weapon change.
Oh yeah.
So athlete I specifically brought up because it discusses the new. It just says you have advantage on jump checks now. So the way jumping works now is when you take the jump action and you attempt to leap more than 5 feet, a jump of 5 feet or less is treated as difficult terrain. So you just expend 10 feet of movement to make that jump.
This is how it was previously, is it?
No, this is what the jump test is now. This is the new rule for jumping. So if it's 5 feet, you can just expend 10 feet of movement to make that jump. If it's more than 5 feet, this is when you have to make a jump test, or a jump check rather, or you take the jump action. So we'll say like 6 feet plus, you have to make a jump action. So when you take this action, your speed must be greater than 0, so you can't just do a standing dead jump. And you must make a DC 10 strength check. It says acrobatics or athletics, so I assume that means you could roll like strength acrobatics.
Yeah.
Which is a bit. It's. I think that's a bit weirdly phrased, personally. If you don't move at least 10 feet immediately before its action, you have disadvantage on the check. So they still have that like run up element of it.
Interesting.
On a failed check, you leave 5 feet horizontally or vertically, whatever way you want to do it. On a successful check, the check's total determines the distance in feet that you can clear horizontally, or half as much if you're jumping vertically, rounded down. This jump doesn't expend your movement, but the distance you clear can't exceed your speed. I like and dislike elements of this. I like the jump isn't considered movement, because I've always thought it was kind of dumb that there is stuff like, you know, like the jump spell or the ring of jumping or the boots of spring and striding, where it improves your jumping ability, but that jumping ability costs your movement, and you can't outpass your movement with the jump. So like,
there's always a bit of a confliction there, kind of.
I do really like that this doesn't expend your movement. So like, if the jump doesn't expend your movement and you still have your speed, that potentially, like, because it is a dice roll, and the number and the distance you travel, that is the check. So if you have like really good athletics or acrobatics, like a plus 10 or something, and you roll a nat 20, that's a 30-foot jump, because that would not exceed most characters' movement.
There is
so you can
it's interesting because this is a far bigger gamble when you want to jump over a gap than before. Because if you have like an 18 strength score,
it's an auto
or 20, you know, like how far is that? 15 feet? I can definitely make that. Whereas you could absolutely butcher this roll and end up down the bottom of a ravine very easily with this.
Yeah, particularly with the whole I you know what, I actually like that they give you the option to at least try and make the check with only 5 foot of run up, because previously you just couldn't do it. You need 10 feet. Like now you can still make
that was always kind of fumbly if you're playing with miniatures as well, because you're like, okay, I want to jump this, I'll go back a couple spaces and now I'll get a run up, and I mean, I get it, and it makes sense that someone would take a few steps back to get a run up at something, but it just makes things a bit like kind of nitty gritty in like not a good way when you're kind of moving minis around and you're like, okay, 1 2 this way, now 1 2 3 this way, and jump. You know, it's a bit strange.
I think I'm a fan of it in general, because it doesn't cost movement, so it actually makes jumping worthwhile. But like,
also, I mean, that's a pretty significant increase for vertical jumping as well. It's quite boosted because again, it used to be just your mod, which was very little. And now it's like if you roll something like you said at 30, you're jumping 15 feet in the air.
But that, like, to be honest though, I kind of want that. Like, that's like, I did find, like, admittedly jumping 6 feet straight up in the air vertically is kind of nuts as well. That's kind of nuts, but like NFL athletes can do that. Like, there are professional athletes who can make that that jump. Like they can do that jump, right?
Yeah.
I'm in D&D. This is fantasy. People are casting fireballs around me. If I'm jumping, I want to do the anime jump where it's like 15 feet into the air and I can like try like with this reasonably like you could like if you're a ground based character, you could like jump up into the air and like do like jumping slashing attacks at like a creature or something like that.
Yeah, it's I kind of like it. It's less finicky, which I found the previous jumping rules to be. As well because you're kind of just like, okay, so previously if you said a gap was X size, it was always kind of weird to me because it's like, okay, what if I have a score of 18? I can clear a gap of 18. What if the gap I'm jumping across is 20 feet wide? Can I just not make that, or can I make that but I need to roll a little higher, or like what do I do? And it was always a bit weird like that. And now it's like when the DM basically sets the DC based exactly on how wide across it is, and you just need to beat the DC, and that kind of trend that makes sense in the context of the rest of the game, where the DM sets DCs for everything, and you just need to beat that DC.
Yeah.
So I like that. It's interesting that it doesn't expend your movement. So that does that technically mean you can like run, jump? You're not using. Oh, when you. It's because it's a jump action now.
Oh,
yeah.
it is an action. Yeah.
So it's almost like you're dashing to a degree because you also can't exceed your speed. Right.
No, but that does mean though you could potentially like if your speed is 30, you could run 30 feet then jump another 30.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But that kind of works out the same as
A dash.
You doing a dash on flat ground. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that kind of makes sense though. If those two line up, I feel like that makes sense for what you should be capable of. Again, jumping 30 feet is absolutely insane and inhuman, but
I love the idea of someone like actually critting their jump check and jumping 30 feet in the air, but they didn't. They just wanted to see how high they could jump. So they jump 30 feet in the air, come back down. They're like low health. They take like
a couple D6 of damage.
Just boom! Ah, my legs! that one guy in every episode of SpongeBob.
I was literally gonna compare. If you up to date with She-Hulk?
Yes.
You see the guy in the most recent episode who tried to run away? He's like a frog superhero, and he jumps out a window, and he like crashes through the window, pure dramatic, and then he just falls from like 3 stories into an alleyway, and he breaks both his legs.
Just with a wet cracking sound. Oh my god.
So funny.
Great episode. Absolutely great episode.
Oh, so good. So good.
Tangent.
Yeah, you mentioned there. Oh, sorry. Did you have anything else you want to say about jumping?
No, I was actually just going to talk about. I think what you're about to say.
Light weapon.
Yes. Do you want to take this one?
Sure. So light weapons. Previously, the way light weapons worked was that. Actually, just while we're on that, there's been a reclassification of a couple of weapons as well,
yes,
where short swords are
light
simple.
Weapons. Simple. So you
Simple
can now
weapons,
use monks can now use short swords.
They had short swords already, but but that was they were like you get simple weapons and short swords. Now it's like they're just part of that. Interesting. Then actually, let me just double check one thing. Short sword weapon, maybe not.
It's gonna be a bunch.
No, I had in my head that scimitars were also the same, but
no way. They hit for a D8. They ain't ever gonna go to simple weapons.
Oh no, scimitars are D6s.
Oh, sorry, I'm always thinking of.
They're basically the same as short swords. Just one is slashing and one is piercing.
Yeah.
So previously, if you had 2 weapons, you're wielding 2 weapons. They are both light weapons. You were able to do an attack with your action and attack with one of them, and as your bonus action, you can make a second attack with that other light weapon in your other hand. The only difference being that this second attack, you don't get to add your modifier to the damage. So if it's a D6 plus 3 for your action attack, it would just be a D6 on that second attack if you attack with 2 short swords. What they've changed now is when you take the attack action on your turn and attack with a light weapon in one hand, you can make 1 extra attack as part of the same action. So not your bonus action, part of the same action. That extra attack must be made with a different light weapon in the other hand, and you don't add your ability modifier to the extra attack's damage. That's the same as before. You can make this extra attack only once on each of your turns. What this basically means is that, and again, Crawford mentioned this in the video when they were talking about it, and this is actually quite a big. It doesn't, because it's not in the actual rogue section, it doesn't seem like it. This is a really big buff to rogues, because previously, if rogues wanted to do that attack, that dagger, if you will, they had to use their bonus action, and rogues are really heavily bonus action oriented. Most of the cool stuff they do is done through bonus actions. So the fact that they can now still get both their dagger attacks or their short sword attacks in, and then also still have their bonus action free to hide or disengage or dash or whatever they want to do, that's massive. That's really good. That's a massive buff. Again, other classes get this feature as well if they want to go with 2 light weapons as their thing, like rangers and stuff. But for the fact that rogues get it and so many of their abilities are leaning on bonus actions, it's a very big indirect buff to the class, which, depending on your point of view and stuff, might actually make you feel a bit better about some of the stuff you think might be debuffed or whatever about rogues.
This would be like hideously broken if it didn't have that one proviso of you can make this extra attack on only once on each of your turns. Because if you got the if that wasn't there and you had the normal level 5 extra attack option, you could have 4 attacks as a standard action.
Because you get 2 attacks and you get 2 extra attacks.
You're literally just going bop, 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 like that.
Yeah, for every action attack you make, you would get a second one. So yeah, the fact that they actually clarify that is good. But I mean, that's cool though. I mean, again, you don't have to like sacrifice hiding as a rogue. You don't have to not drink that potion. You don't have to not cast that spell. You can still get both your attacks or I forget what the ruling is, but you might. I think you can coat a weapon with poison as a bonus action as well.
I think so. I think definitely the thief anyway, because you can like use item and use magic item as a bonus action, can't you?
Previously, I think it's gone now though, right? We just read through it.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
But
I like this as a new rule, to be honest. And it makes sense as well.
I think it might be a good idea to maybe talk about the two feats that interact with this particular change. Really, there's actually 3 feats that interact with it specifically, and that is Dual Wielder, 2-weapon fighting, and Crossbow Expert. They all specifically interact with this change to light weapons.
Yes, look, we'll do that. Let's do it in order. Dual wielding.
Crossbow Expert.
Crossbow Expert first. Sorry.
Yeah. So previously. Yeah, I have this all broadly written down.
Yeah, you got notes. You're hosting this week, so I didn't do anything.
And that is a hallowed tradition of this show.
I feel like the one thing that makes this us not get burnt out on doing this podcast is the fact that we basically only do every second episode. The other one just shows up then.
It's fun. One of us is prepped. I feel it's almost like doing like a class presentation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like we're doing part of the work each.
Yeah, exactly. So the old Crossbow Expert would give you ignore the loading property. You don't have disadvantage on ranged attacks within 5 feet, and when you attack with a one-handed weapon as an action, you can use your bonus action to do an attack with a crossbow, as long as it's a one-handed light crossbow.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So as long as you have your fire, actually, technically the way that's written is you can make an attack with a short sword or something as well.
Yeah.
Previously, you could do a short sword, or you could do whatever, and you could do offhand, pull out a crossbow and let off a shot.
Yeah, as long as it's a one-handed weapon with a light property, I believe is the reason of it. With the new Crossbow Expert, so first of all, you have to be 4th level. You can't repeat it, and you have to have proficiency with at least one martial weapon.
Ideally a crossbow.
Like you're never. Well, actually, that's not true. Most of the time you will either have proficiency with none or all. Some origin or combos and stuff like that will get like specific weapons, like elf weapon training or something. So that's where that might come in. But with this one, you actually get a little bit of a power bump because you now get a +1 to Dex.
Yeah, actually, most feats tend to have a +1 to 1 ability modifier. Included now, which is nice across the board.
It is nice. Particularly with some of the other ones that they've done stuff too. So +1 to Dex. You still ignore the loading properties of crossbows. You can fire in melee range with no penalties. And now add mods to do. So now when you have that and you do the crossbow attack as part of the extra attack with the light weapon property. So if you have 2 crossbows and you make an attack with the first one, you can make an attack with the second one without using your bonus action. And this will allow you to add your modifiers to that attack.
This is kind of like the dual wielding fighting style that we had previously, but this applies specifically to your crossbow.
Exactly.
I like this though. This is, to me, that's an all-round buff on that feat. You get a +1. Um, because of the way the rule has changed, you don't need to have that thing where you can do the offhand attack now. And now it's just included in it, so it's like, yeah, just add your mod instead, which is nice. You don't need a fighting style or anything like that.
It is pretty nice. And
Yep.
then the other one we have which is dual wielder.
Yes.
Basically, also a 4th level. The way it works now is also a 4th level requirement. You also need martial weapon requirements, +1 strength or dex. And then there is basically no change to you no longer get the +1 AC from dual wielder, but you still have you can use you can dual wield non-light weapons, as long as they don't have the two-handed property, and you can draw and stow 2 one-handed weapons. Interestingly though, I think if you dual wield and you use and you have the dual wielder feat, would that allow you to class longswords as light, and therefore when you do the attack thing you get the 2 attacks for the 1 attack from the changes to the light weapon property?
Yeah, so let me just double check this now. So yeah, this one actually kind of maybe has a little bit of a debuff. So previously dual wielder gave you +1 to AC, which is pretty cool. It made sense because you're going to be able to parry more incoming attacks.
Yeah.
You can use 2 weapon fighting even when the one-handed melee weapons are not light.
Yeah.
And you can draw and stow. The draw and stow is still there as before. That hasn't changed. You get a +1 to your dexterity now, or strength or dexterity. The way this works is enhanced dual wielding. When you are holding a weapon with a light property in one hand, you can treat a non-light weapon in your other hand as if it had the light property, provided the weapon lacks the two-handed property. What this reads as to me, and I'm pretty sure I'm reading it correctly, is that you actually can't dual wield longswords or battle axes anymore. You can have a longsword or a battle axe in one hand, and then you can. Is that right? Because you have to have one light weapon when you are holding a weapon with a light property. So one of the weapons has to have the light property.
You can't do longsword. You'd have to do like short sword, longsword.
Exactly, yeah, or like dagger and longsword or something like that. So this one kind of got a bit of a debuff, and I don't think it's possible, based on the rules I read here so far, to dual wield longswords or dual wield battle axes now anymore. Now, look, that's not massively detrimental when you consider that, like, you're talking about the difference between like a D6 and a D8 dice. It's not huge in terms of power.
I think it'll get a big reaction though.
I think people might just.
I think people will hate this.
Perspective.
I think people will absolutely hate this. Because
I think people, and I don't.
You want to dual wield your longswords. You want to be, like you want to be your Leonardo or whatever, from the team.
It's not this is not a thing I think people will be upset at because it's mechanically, much weaker now because it's technically
like 2 damage.
Not having the +1 to AC is a pretty big debuff. The difference between not having.
I don't think they needed it, to be honest. I think it was still a decent feat without it, and particularly now that you're adding the +1 to strength or dex with it, I think that's a decent compensation.
Yeah, that's not a bad trade-off. But yeah, I do think people, like you said, will get angry not because this is something that is mechanically weaker. They'll get angry because, well, I want to play a character who wields. I want to be Sir Arthur Dane, Sword of the Morning, with 2 longswords, cleaving people up.
Arthur Dane did not use 2 fucking longswords. Arthur Dane used a great sword made out of a comet, and those are. That upset me.
That wasn't Valerian Steel.
That upset me so bad. That upset me so bad. I got so angry when I saw Arthur Dane using 2 swords and spinning them like he was a Jedi.
But the Jedi edit, that's really good, though.
It is very good. I'll give you
that. This one, it's a weird one. I do see people complaining about this a little bit. Honestly, I get it, and I haven't done much. I've done very little martial arts in my entire life. You've done far more than me, but I did do a little bit of eskrima for a short time. And one technique we were being taught was something called a spada daga, which is like you have a dagger in one hand and a longer sword, and your longer sword is for like reaching, and your dagger is for like getting in close and like basically shivving someone.
Like a spada daga, it was really, really popular around like medieval Europe as well. A lot of the historical medieval European fighting treatises will have people fight with like a long, really, really common dual wielder in throughout history was the rapier and the dagger.
Yeah.
And a espada daga as well, in terms of like a long sword and a dagger, long sword and short sword. It's a very, very common trope in like the real world, because in the real world, if you fight with two long swords, it's not that useful. It's actually probably less useful than fighting with one long sword.
You're probably better off having your primary hand have a reach weapon, though you can stretch out like that, and then having a short weapon for if you get in close. Like, because a long sword is great for reaching, but if someone gets right up on top of you, you can't really swing a long sword. So then you have your dagger, and that's kind of what it's for.
Exactly. But yeah,
I do have a special place in my heart for that style, and I like that. But I can still do that even if you let someone wield two long swords, you know?
Yeah.
And again, someone wanting to be like, I want to play Leonardo, I want to have two long swords and be like swinging them around. I mean, currently Mike is playing
it's literally who I thought of when I read it.
Yeah, he basically he has a turtle who literally wields two swords. He's kind of a way more angsty, darker, murderous
He's
Leonardo.
all of the turtles combined into one, except for Donatello.
Hello.
Because he's smart.
Yeah, pretty much. He has the goofiness of Mike. He has the combat ability of Leonardo, and he has all the rage of Raphael.
And the angst.
And the angst. But yeah, I honestly, okay, I don't think this is terrible, but I think for the sake of just giving people the freedom to build their characters differently, and again, for the sake of being like, you get, instead of like having
there's just something
two D6s without this, and then having a D6 and a D8 with it, why not just give someone two D8s? It's at most it's 2 points more in damage. Like, you know, it's not a big deal.
I was just saying there is just something badass about like dual wielding warhammers. Like,
yeah, exactly, or battle axes for that matter. Like, you know, yeah. I think that one should be tweaked. I think it should just be like when you're deciding now.
I think if they don't tweak this will be one of the most commonly homebrew of. This will be up there with potions or a bonus action to drink in terms of commonly overruled.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of real world applications, I get why it is the way it is, but I don't necessarily think that real world applications should be the basis for how we judge our fantasy game. So
exactly, like my Bloodhunter does the same as Mike, dual wields two longswords, and it's cool.
Yeah, and it's cool. It's
really
badass.
fucking cool. Like he's got one that's a fire sword now, and he's got his like vestige sword that does radiant damage. So he's like fire and radiant damage on these two crazy longswords. And like if this comes in rules is written for by the time I'm running my next campaign, and like I know he's not doing a martial class for the next one, but if he came to me and was like, could I do, and like maybe not dual wielding longswords, maybe he wants to dual wield warhammers, I'd be like, for the sake of like crushing an idea someone is like super excited about, for like what it's going to be like 2 extra damage.
It's a weird stance to take on what I don't think will mechanically break the game, because we've had it for all this time, and like when you like, and like that's kind of the point of the feat is like, I'm taking this feat so I can now have these 2 long swords or these 2 hammers, you know. I think just giving you one, again, and the thing is, with the way it was previously, if you wanted to have a long sword and a short sword or whatever, if you wanted to stick with that kind of, or a long sword and a dagger, you're totally entitled to do that. But it's just giving the people the option, and I think that this should be tweaked just to include, again, I can't stress it enough, it's not going to mechanically up yield the entire game to have someone roll a D8 instead of a D6.
Yeah, and there's been and similarly to that, then there's been a change to the 2 weapon fighting style, because this is all kind of bound up in how the light weapon property now works. But previously 2 weapon fighting, it would just be you take this feat and you can add your modifiers to your offhand weapon damage.
Yes.
Because if you do it as raw, if you do 2 weapon fight as raw, because technically everyone can 2 weapon fight as long as they have a weapon in each hand.
You just don't get the modifier on the offhand.
Exactly. Previously with 2 weapon fighting, however, you could do 2 weapon fighting if you don't have the dual wielder feat. You could still 2 weapon fight and get the damage on your offhand attack. Now, however, it only adds the modifiers to the extra attack from the light weapon property.
Yeah, but I mean that's the same as the fighting style was before. It's more so that this has been changed to accommodate the other rule instead of anything else, but it functions the same.
No, that's what I was just pointing out, in that like that is now limited to the same way, limited in the same way the other one is limited. And I don't know why. It seems, to be honest, a bit dumb to me.
What do you mean?
Like just in the same way that like the other one is limited from like, well, okay, so now instead of using two long swords, I'm going to use a long sword and a short sword. So I'm going from a D8 and a D8 to a D8 and a D6. Like statistically speaking, that's like +2 damage in the difference.
Yeah.
Why bother? Like 2 damage is nothing. Just like it seems
Agreed.
like such
Yeah.
an unimportant change. So like, yeah, like it just for the same reasons as I was saying, like, you know, like why, like, let people dual wield warhammers, let people dual wield longswords, let people dual wield battle axes. Like it makes barely any difference. Why is it such a hard rule? Like,
Yeah, sorry, I feel like I'm missing the beat here. With the 2-weapon fighting, that functions the same as the 2-weapon fighting style did previously. Normally, you can't add the modifier, and that rule was in the game previously, and that rule is a rule they're suggesting now. But with this, it lets you add that modifier on the extra attack you get for being a dual wielder.
I'm talking about I'm talking about 2-weapon fighting.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Never mind.
No, I feel
I feel like we're following each other around in circles.
So for example, at the moment, Mike is playing Wabu.
Yeah.
Wabu makes 2 attacks as an action, and as a bonus action, he gets 1 additional attack.
Yes.
He doesn't add his strength on that additional attack because that's his offhand. Now, if he took the fighting style rules, the way the rules are written now for the game, he would get to add his strength on that 3rd attack. And this does the exact same thing as that. But again, like it still says that extra attack you get, whether you get it from the bonus action or you get it from it being incorporated into your action, you still get to add your strength or your dex or whatever you're using onto that additional attack you get.
But is it not restricted to light weapons? So like you couldn't. Like you, but I'm just pointing out that again, like you can't like dual wield long swords with this.
Sorry. Well, technically, actually, the way the rule is written above for the dual wielding feat, what this says is when you are holding a weapon with a light weapon property in one hand, you can treat a non-light weapon in your other hand as if it had the light property. So, you're still not adding your modifier on whatever your additional attack is there.
Okay.
So, and the way this says it is, to my finding, when you make an extra attack of the light weapon property. Yeah. So it would apply if you had a long sword and a short sword as part of the dual weapon or dual wielding feat. Whichever one is your offhand, this would still let you add that to it. Your action, you get to add your strength or your dex or whatever you're using, and your extra attack that you get as part of the light weapon feature, which used to be your bonus action. And again, you used to not be able to add your mod onto that without the fighting style. This new fighting style feat still lets you add your mod onto it as before. So I don't think there's any change there.
Okay, fair enough. I think I just misinterpreted that. That's on me. Okay, so we're going to talk about.
Sorry, I've melted your brain now.
No, it's not. I'm just preparing myself because we're going to talk about We're going to talk about 2 feats in particular. There have been some changes made to that, and it worries me, Conor. It worries me. Unless that's going to just be built into the base classes now, but it's Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter, and I think to slightly lesser extent as well Polearm Master.
I actually haven't looked at Polearm Master yet.
So with both Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter, they have stripped out the -5 to hit for a +10 to damage thing, which is I would say probably a good 80% of the in Sharpshooter's case, a good 80% of the reason someone takes the feat, and in Great Weapons Master's case, like 90% of the reason someone takes that feat. It is because you want and need that damage boost. So they've both are gated to level 4, and you need proficiency with any martial weapon to use them. You can't repeat them. Now with Great Weapon Master, you get with Great Weapon Master, you do the -5 to hit for a +10 to your damage roll, and then when you crit or kill a creature, with a 2-handed weapon with the heavy property, you can make an additional attack as a bonus action. That is how Great Weapon Master currently functions. The way Great Weapon Master will function in One D&D going forward, if this is, I'm gonna give so much goddamn feedback on this. If the way it does now is you get a +1 to your strength to a max of 20. You have the cleave ability, which immediately after you score a. Sorry, that's the exact same. Cleave doesn't change. When you crit or kill a creature, you can make a bonus action attack with your weapon. What they have changed.
It's the same. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, what they have changed is they have a new feature now called Heavy Weapon Mastery. When you hit a creature with a heavy weapon as part of the attack action on your turn, you can cause the weapon to deal extra damage to the target. This extra damage equals your proficiency bonus, and you can deal it only once per turn. So it works. They've and then the sharpshooter. Sorry, because I was about to go off on a rant, but
Sharpshooter functions similarly in that its ability for -5 for a +10 damage is it just removed, or does it change to something different?
It was removed entirely.
It's removed entirely in this case, yeah.
So with both of these feats, what they've done is they've removed basically the main point why people actually take them, which is the +10 to your damage roll. And instead they've given you a +1 to your main stat for Great Master's Strength, for Sharpshooter it's Dex. And in Sharpshooter's case as well, they have given you the firing and melee thing, where if you're within 5 feet, you don't get disadvantage on firing your weapon.
Previously it used to be only you have the ignore long range thing, which is called long shots. That's still there. You ignore half and 3/4 cover. That's still there as well. They've taken out the -5 for a +10, and they've added in a +1 to your dex and the ability to not have disadvantage when firing within melee.
So I really don't like this. I really don't like these. I've seen a lot of videos recently actually going around about in an objective way, why would you play a melee or a martial class? There's been a bunch of them that have gone up recently. Actually, Nerdarchy did a very good one, in which they compared where you could play a cleric. Why, if you can play a cleric, why would you ever play a fighter? Why would you ever play a barb? All these things, because you have the martial prowess if you choose to go a war cleric or anything like that, and they can all use simple weapons. Some of them get specific martial weapon proficiency because of the thing. Warlocks, they've got Hexblade. There's and then just in terms of the raw output, right? Because if you're playing a martial class, you're playing a class because you enjoy combat and you want to excel in combat. And to excel in combat in D&D is to do damage or have significant impactful turns on during the course of a battle, right?
Yeah.
As a spellcasting class, and I know I felt this myself going from a paladin to a bard. The difference in how impactful I feel can be in terms of depending on or being just being prepared for every situation is massive. And again, that's part of the whole thing of playing martial. But stuff like Great Weapon Master and stuff like Sharpshooter, they're big +10 damage, and you can do that in every attack as long as you take that -5 penalty. That's such a massive part, in my opinion, of how classes that are martial classes, and I don't just mean strength classes either. I mean your archer characters. If you want to play a non-magical archer, in order to keep up with your spellcaster classes and not feel like you're redundant, or because if there's a round of combat goes and it's people, it's oh, I stun this creature, you're fighting a boss one, so this guy stuns him, this girl does 50 damage to him, this guy does this, the next character comes around, they do some horrendous amount of damage with a spell, or disintegrates them or something like that. Then it comes around to the fighter's turn and you do 30 damage with your 2 hits. It's still 30 damage, but when everything else happening around you is such a larger or greater scale, that 30 damage feels so very non-impactful. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And the Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter features, I think, with their plus to the damage, that massive +10 to damage, admittedly, if you wanted to nerf it, I would have maybe increased the penalty, maybe make it a -8 to your roll or something like that for a +10. I would have tuned it that way, maybe increase the penalty, increase the risk versus reward of it. Maybe if you go to -8, you go to +16 in the damage. Some way to compensate that, but I do feel that might be just leaving it as base state. But do you know what I mean? I feel there are ways you could have kept that feature in, but gated it or tuned it, something like that. what they've done here instead is just entirely remove that and then given you like a +1 to your main stat, which on a base case scenario where when you take this you're at an odd number on your stat. You're like at like an 8 and you're at like a 17 or a 19, so you're going to like 18 or 20 based off taking these feats.
Yeah.
At the most, that gives you a +1 to your damage. The heavy weapon mastery in particular annoys me. It really, really annoys me because proficiency ticks up so slowly throughout a game. Like, you go like at maximum at 20th level if you hit someone with this and you've a great weapon master. Admittedly, there is no penalty. This just happens. It just happens when you hit someone with a weapon.
Yeah.
You maximum get 6 extra damage once a turn. 6 extra damage once a turn. Whereas every single attack on your turn, if you got hasted, if you action surge, if you have some other way, if you're a 2-weapon fighter and you're doing 3 attacks around, all of those, any of those, you could apply that +10 to, and like the -5 is a big enough risk that, do you know what? I've seen sharpshooter fail more times than I've seen sharpshooter succeed. You know what I mean? Like I just think like every time like Aerith used sharpshooter in our game when he was playing when Gav was playing Aerith, like he hit a lot of shots, but I have distinct memories of an awful lot of shots where he sharpshootered and it was like, this would have been a normal hit, but now it's a miss, so you've entirely missed the damage instead. So I do think like with sharpshooter in particular and Grandmaster does, although I can see the complaints that they kind of are a bit overpowered, I think that that deduction was kind of not super, like they said you could maybe buff that. I don't think it warranted complete removal, and it makes me really, really nervous for like when the warrior class comes around to see what way they're going to change the warrior classes, because already the warrior group for clarity includes fighter, barb, and monk. Monk I feel get to be very, very responsive, have lots of different ways to respond to things in the game, in and out of combat. They have lots of different ways to tackle a challenging situation. I feel like fighters and barbs are much more limited because they're more like single purpose. I like things like the fighter and they're a bit more single purpose, or rather, I suppose.
I would have always considered fighters in particular, the fact that they get additional feats and stuff like that compared to other classes, that was kind of to compensate for the fact that they are a little more, not that they're limited, but they have the ability to do things, but it's more like, here, you decide what things you want them to do, pick what feats you feel shape the character. Whereas for other classes or whatever, maybe it's a bit more implied with what class you're playing. You know, monk is going to be the fast one. Monk is going to be the one that punches 3 to 4 times around and gets in not heavy damaging hits, but multiple light hits.
That builds up then.
And that builds up, exactly. And then fighters will hit, and then barbs will hit fewer times, but do more damage per hit. And then fighters are somewhere in the middle where they get to hit multiple times, but also they get to do decent damage on those hits as well.
Yeah, I'm worried, right? Because if they were trying to balance those feats, these feats would be more powerful. Like the sharpshooter one also, actually, the heavy weapon master one really annoys the great weapon master. I'm almost actually equally annoyed at the fact that they give close quarter shooting to sharpshooter. No, that's not what a sharpshooter does. A sharpshooter is implied by the name, is someone who is excellently accurate. Like, that's what a sharpshooter is, and that implies a distance. At least in my mind.
Yeah.
But I've had my rant, so please.
Yeah, okay.
I need to just take some calming breaths now.
Yes, deep breaths, soothing ocean sounds.
Woosa, woosa.
If you can't tell, Martin feels very passionately about this. So with I do agree that these are. I liked those abilities.
Oh wow, I talked for a while. Sorry.
So I agree. Taking those -5s for +10 damage, that gamble added an additional kind of layer of fun, I think, into it. Also, it's something proactive you can do. You know, a lot of what's in these two things here is just stuff that happens, whereas, pardon me, it's something that like what you can do now, it just happens. Whereas previously, it's like, I'm choosing in this moment to take this risk and stuff, and that adds a little bit more of a gamble, a bit more interaction, and a bit more involvement in the game. So from that perspective, I definitely don't like that these things have been removed. When I look at the sharpshooter in particular, and I say this as someone who plays ranged characters a lot. I played an archer. I like playing archers. I have a big thing for archery. Um, when I look at it and I think, okay, two of the other abilities there are the same as they were before. We've now added in the fire and melee thing and the +1 to your dexterity. Do I feel that the two of these equate the -5 to +10 thing that was removed? Probably not. Most of it, I feel like they account for most of it, if I'm being honest. I've been an archer in plenty of situations where a monster runs right up on me and
But
I need to pull out a...
I feel like that's the situation though you opt into by playing like I'm going to pick a longbow and I'm going to be an archer and I'm going to be like essentially a sniper with a bow. Like I feel like that's I feel like you consciously opt into knowing that that's a weakness. Like when you pick that.
Yeah, probably. And like it's yeah. Here's the thing. I something I would say about how weapons are designed in 5th edition, and maybe we'll see changes to that coming up. I don't really know, but how they are at least designed at the moment is that there are no rules as written, was in normal standard rules, not including sort of like optional stuff, the D&G and all that. Normal standard rules, there are no weapons, no ranged weapons that outpace the heights that you can get from melee. Like you get 2d6 with a greatsword, you get 2d6 with a maul. You don't have that on any range stuff. And the idea is that, well, if you're going to be far away, you're not going to do as much damage as the person who's swinging a 30 kg club into someone's face and breaking their jaw, like, and I get that. And that's a perfect balance thing, because it's like, yeah, the person who's taking the risk and getting right up on this enemy should be doing more damage than the person that's hanging back and hitting them with arrows. That makes sense. In that sense, and again, coming from someone who plays ranged characters, I mourn the loss of that gamble that I get to optionally take, where I can choose in a moment to go, I'm going to go sharpshooter on this one because I need to do damage and I'll take the risk that I might not hit, I mourn the loss of that fun mechanic. I don't mourn the loss of the damage necessarily, because I feel that, again, as an archer, you don't necessarily need that. We're running short on time, so I'm going to quickly jump across to Great Weapon Master.
Sure.
I feel if we're going to be... I feel a Great Weapon Master should probably have something that lets them do more damage. Again, because I feel like the up-close fighters, the up-close barbarians, they need reasons to justify being up close. Like, why am I bothering to run up close on this creature where it can claw me and bite me and breathe fire on me, when the archer is hanging, back here shooting arrows at it? The reason I'm doing it is because I want to get up close and do more damage. I'm getting rage damage. I'm doing multiple attacks as a fighter. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I want to do more damage, attack for attack. And with that, I feel that this the +1 to strength is nice. Did you get that previously? You didn't. No. So the +1 to strength is nice, but again, we're seeing that across the board. I like the cleave ability, but that was there already. The heavy weapon master, again, same situation. I mourn the loss of that fun mechanic where you can choose in the moment to take a gamble and do something risky with a potential payoff. That's fun. That's exciting. So I do miss that fun aspect of it. I don't think this is terrible, but it's not good. I think this would actually be kind of cool if you take away the once per turn thing, and you're doing proficiency damage. You're basically getting a Barb's Rage ability or rage damage, like on top of all your weapon attacks. And I feel like that would scale up nicely, because at level 3 or whatever, when you're doing let's say you're doing 2 attack, you're doing 1 attack. Let's say level 5, you're doing like an extra 6 damage in a turn. So you have 2 attacks as a fighter, and you get an extra 3 damage on both of them. And by the time you get to like 17th level, or whenever you get your 4th fighting attack, you're doing 24 additional damage around, which I think is nice and substantial. It scales up nicely enough. But I do think the once per turn is very limiting. God, I really don't want to go over time on this. So if you're talking about having a -5 penalty to do double that in damage, if you were to strip away the -5 and then bring this down by 5, you're kind of in a similar ballpark for damage, but only if you can do it on every single attack,
Yeah.
So if you take away the penalty, but also by the same scale, scale down the damage you're doing down to 5 instead of 10, then I'm like, okay, that kind of lines up a little bit with what we're seeing here. But again, for me, the crippling part of this heavy weapon mastery ability is the fact that it's once per turn. I feel like that is very limiting. I'm not so heartbroken about the loss of damage on ranged fighters, because again, I feel like ranged fighters get the luxury of hanging back 100 feet, or in this case 600, because you ignore the long range thing now. So if you're going to be the guy with a maul that's rushing up in heavy armor and attacking the dragon or something like that, yeah, why not add on proficiency damage on every single hit? I feel like that's a fair trade-off. If you told me that it was this ability, but we strip out the once per turn and you just get proficiency additional damage on every single hit you do, and I mean every hit as a fighter, that's substantial. I feel like that's a fair trade. But again, I do feel we're missing out on that fun aspect of, I'm taking the initiative, I'm taking the agency to decide that right now I want to try and hit him extra hard, but maybe miss. I'm making that choice there. I feel like that fun aspect is lost on both of them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that. Yeah, that the kind of gambling mechanic, very much.
Yeah, because again, it's something you choose to do. It's proactive.
Yeah.
Whereas this is like, it's all stuff that just happens anyway. You know, and I don't think that's a terrible feature, but it's nice to be able to make a choice in the moment to go, I'm gonna do this cool move, and then you do that move, and that's cool. You know?
I get you, and we kind of finish off this, but like, I think just in general with design, I think if everything is a passive, I think that's terrible design. Like,
agreed.
I think honestly that nearly everything should be an active, as in like you choose to do it, because it gives you agency.
I would prefer, I think, if this, if both these feats, particularly the Great Weapon Master one, said, here, you learn like a move, not necessarily like a fighter,
or even if, like, I think the better way to do it would have been if they want to gate that damage, like, have it be a multiple investment feat. Have it be like, you can take this feat at level 1 and you get 5 damage once a turn, and then when if you really want to go into this, and then you get, like, call it maybe like Great Weapon Expertise, and then like you level into another version of that feat at, let's say, level 5. Say it's a level 8 feat requirement, right? And that is OG Great Weapon Master, and that is one where you take -5 for a +10, and because by that time, by level 10, and like say like the first one is like 5, and then you can only do it once around, and then like you level into it again, so you invest in ASI into that again, and then you get +1 dex, you get the cleave ability, you get the -5 for the +10. I think that would have been a better way to do it.
Yeah, I do think that both, even regular Great Weapon Master, as it was written in the 2014 book, at level 1 is really powerful.
I can understand. Like, the gate at level 4 thing doesn't upset me all that much. It's more so
I think that's a reasonable level to kind of, because as well, because you have other mechanics that you as a player, like new or old player, will be getting used to as your character for the first couple levels, and by the time you hit level 4, it's like, cool, I got a handle on all these abilities and stuff like that. Let's toss on some extra rules and stuff like that.
Yeah, and
I don't utterly hate the sharpshooter, and again, this is from someone who plays ranged characters, so I'm like, if anything, I should be biased the other direction, but I'm not. I don't feel like it's mechanically the worst thing in the world. I do wish we had. I do wish there was a move or an option that I choose in the moment to do, because then I get to feel more involved in what I'm doing. I don't just attack every turn. I get to say, hey, I'm attacking and I'm doing that special attack that I do.
Yeah,
that's more fun.
I think this is why so many people want high level maneuvers for martial classes, to like that scale in a similar way that spells levels do. But look, Conor, I think we're way over time. I think.
Yeah, this is a lot longer than we normally go. The audio portion of the podcast is going to be a pain. Martin, I believe that's all the time we have for today. If you have any questions you'd like us to ask, stories you'd like us to share, topics you'd like us to cover, please tweet us at MicFlayers on Twitter. You can see it on the lower screen. You can find our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcast, Anchor, Breaker, and Radio Republic. Martin, where can people find you on the internet?
You can mostly find me on the internet on Twitter at So Sorry It's Over, and also on the Micflayers podcast Twitter account at MicFlayers which are both in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Conor, where can people find you?
You can find me on the internet at 0.Conor on Twitter, ZeroPointConor, 1N, very important. And as always, every Friday here on the Micflayers podcast on all the aforementioned platforms at 6 p.m. Irish time. That's your outro, so you go.
Alright, folks, we will see you again this time next week, as Conor said, for a brand new episode of the Micflayers podcast. Best of luck. Goodbye.
Later, folks.